better rolling dice. You never know if it could change your life. Take a chance, you need a wrong or right. You never know if you don't roll them dice.
Okay.
You better roll them dice. You never know if it could change your life.
For this?
Yes, Matt. Doing okay.
Great. Rob, I need to show you something. Tell me what you see. This is a worrywart. This is a worrywart transformed. Do you see?
I see. I see, Matt. I see.
Rob, this is a rainbow dragon. This is a rainbow dragon transformed. Do you see?
You know, I actually don't know this bit, Matt. I'm sorry.
That's okay. You just have to ask.
No,
act
but
worried.
you've been making this joke all weekend, and I don't know what you're referencing.
You are privy, Rob, to a great becoming.
Okay, sorry. Now I'm following.
Now
I'm following.
But you recognize nothing. You're an afterbirth, Rob. Rob has asked me to prep something about a red dragon. Is that correct?
The great red dragon.
The great red dragon.
The great red dragon. Who opposes our overlord.
Clothed in sun.
That's
and
right.
A woman clothed in sun. We're talking art. We're talking William Blake. We're talking Ralph Fiennes.
That's right. We're talking the beautiful fallen angel Lucifer.
Yes.
And his army of heaven.
Oh wait, did you read something else? I read Red Dragon. What did you read, Rob?
I read the Light Raider handbook. Of DragonRaid.
Oh, DragonRaid, not Red Dragon.
Not Red Dragon.
So,
no.
Rob, tell me what is DragonRaid and why are we talking about it?
Well, first of all, I think we should introduce ourselves in the podcast. Matt. This is Dungeon Master of None.
I'm Dungeon Master Matt.
And I'm Rob. And today we were talking about, that's right, folks, we are talking about DragonRaid, which is, well, it's many things, but most importantly, it is a adventure learning system.
Right, by Adventure Learning Systems Incorporated, 4721 Chromium Drive, Colorado Springs, Colorado.
I want to read the exact phrasing because it is very, very delightful to me. So I'm going to have to find this. But it is not, Matt, and this is very important to understand, it is not just, or not a Christian RPG. No, it is so much more than that.
We've gone beyond role-playing game systems for your review today into, well, I mean, another plane of existence, another Eden, if you will.
Yes. It is
Eden again.
Eden again. Yes. There's a lot of.
Okay, wait. You're gonna tell us what it is.
Yeah, and I'm not funny. Hold on a second. Hold on.
You can pause.
Where's? Okay. DragonRaid is an exciting adventure system. It is sorry, I got this wrong. I said an adventure learning system, but it is an adventure learning simulation system of danger and intrigue that offers hours of enjoyment while promoting practical Christian growth.
Yes, that's right. Today we're going to talk a little about a fun blast from the very ancient past of 1984, COVID 1984. We're talking about DragonRaid. It's a Christian Sunday school roleplay system. And it's beautiful. It's wonderful.
It's wonderful. It's honestly, it's very. There's a lot of effort that went into this, and it's very, very earnest, which makes it hard to make fun of, but not that hard. But you know, it is, and so this is funny because we'll go into sort of the inside baseball behind the scenes of this. But if you listen to the current and past creators of DragonRaid, now Light Raiders, they will tell you that this is not a Christian RPG, that this is not, and it's certainly not a imitation of Dungeons and Dragons or an attempt to win over role players to Dungeons and Dragons. Like I said, that's what they say.
Right. Well, and it feels like, so it's a Christian role-playing game. It feels like it's made by people who did really love Dungeons and Dragons. And we're like, what if we use this to teach people Bible verses?
Right. It seems very obvious. And again, they will deny this. And I don't know why. I assume because they're upset about the idea of being derivative, but they will deny it. But it seems clear that someone was like, oh, Dungeons and Dragons seems cool. What if we did that, but instead it was advanced Bible study? And what you have is DragonRaid.
I think the first thing I'll say before we get into, we'll save the like details of the publishing of this stuff for later. But the first thing I'll say is like the cool thing about this, not role-playing game system, but learning system.
Adventure learning simulation.
Is that your characters are all, you're all twice born. You have all been chosen among the redeemed.
As if you were born twice. Maybe even as if
it happened
you had been again.
Yeah, born.
Born? Anyway.
And your job is to go into evil and corrupted lands of the dragon and basically like save souls, but also the evil corrupted lands of the dragon are populated by like giants and orcs and like cave spiders,
mucks,
but also all of those creatures are all aliens. They're all aliens from other planets. But every art in this role-playing game looks like sword and sorcery, like people with armor and swords fighting dragons and giants.
Right. The front of the new player briefing has a real like knight and princess looking couple and a lion and a wolf. It's very Narnia.
Yeah, it's very Narnia. One of the other thing about this game is it comes with like 6 books, a tape.
Cassette tape, yeah.
Fold out miniatures, 2 special dice, one of which is called a StarLot.
They're not called dice. They're called a StarLot, and the other one's called a something or other. I don't remember.
The starting adventure Rescue of the Sacred Scrolls has a beautiful blonde woman like hanging out with a sexy unicorn. So yeah, like there's all sorts of cool.
And here's the thing: this is explicitly. So if you're thinking, "Oh, this sounds like Narnia. This sounds like thinly veiled allegory," and you know what? You're right. It's explicit in the book. It says, DragonRaid is a whole system for many adventures. An extensive imaginary world is used to provide allegorical parallels to real life. Other fantasy role-playing games create open-ended situations that have the tendency to reinforce worldly values and philosophies. Many of them even generate unrighteous interest in the occult. But DragonRaid is radically different in that it uses the imagination to convey a biblical understanding of good and evil. Later on, it says, when evil is mentioned in DragonRaid,
I'll have a bone to pick with that later. The morality in this system, maybe not exactly.
Yeah,
right.
Hang on. I'm just telling you what it says. I have many bones to pick with it. When evil is mentioned in DragonRaid, it is always as an enemy to just be destroyed. DragonRaid teaches Christians to be tough, know the Bible, and fight sin zealously. The number of missions you can go on in the system is limitless. Therefore, it is a tool that can be used to simulate all the trials, temptations, and joys of an adventurous Christian life.
Well, it is really like if it's some cool youth pastor by the name of Dick Wolf.
Sorry, we haven't mentioned this yet. The guy who created this is literally named Dick Wolf with a U, not an O.
Yeah, dropping the sound beats for all the Law and Order dun-duns.
Dun, 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 dun.
Yeah, so Dick Wolf came up with this after...
Big Dick Wolf, yeah.
Playing D&D, and he was like, well, what if, like, we made kids go through a not role-playing game of Pilgrim's Progress, and that would basically teach them, to be better Christians, and this will be a fun thing to do at, like, youth night at church or Sunday school. And, maybe it will be. I mean, we'll get into it. I guess...
This reminds... the thing this reminds me the most of, Matt... of all the RPGs we've dealt with is genuinely the Wendy's RPG, because this
is the Wendy's RPG, except the Temple of Fast Food has been replaced with the new covenant with our Lord and Savior,
because it feels like something that's like completely like a parody or a derivation, but so much effort and like energy and like actual thought has gone into it that just kind of like blows my mind that anybody that this is meant to be taken seriously, and yet it very clearly is. It's kind of wild.
And we know that like a good chunk, just like a good chunk of the world's population is religious and specifically Christian. A good chunk of the people who play Dungeons and Dragons and role-playing games are too. If you're of that persuasion, hopefully you see the humor in like trying to take a game of imagination and specifically making it into a game to make you memorize Bible verses.
Yeah. And so before we begin, I want to be clear. Yes, we are going to poke fun at the DragonRaid system, but I don't mean to. I hope it doesn't come off as, cruel or mocking, because there is genuinely like some fun stuff in this, and it is not actually worse than some RPGs that are, from the same era.
Yeah.
It's just a very like strange approach. And it's like most like most 1980s RPGs, kind of goofy.
Yeah, it's super goofy. And the funny thing is, I think when I saw a copy of this on eBay like years ago, right, and ordered it, it was because if this RPG had not gotten canceled by the extreme right, which is what happened to it, and was still around when Rob and I were kids, after we played D&D, our parents or like our youth pastors would have got this for us.
Oh, for
and
sure.
So that's why it speaks to us so much. It's someone would have made us play this or tried to get us to play this if it had not been canceled in like 1986.
The other thing that it reminds me of, in addition to the Wendy's RPG, is all the Bible video games that...
Billy Graham's Bible Blaster?
That not my parents, but actually my parents and other parents.
I had the Moses
game
video game on Game Boy where you would drop staves and they would either turn to snakes or they would explode.
Right. It has the same...
collected mana from heaven and it gave you power-ups.
It has the same problem as Christian video games, Christian popular music, Christian novels, like the...
shoot those believers or unbelievers with the word of God. Oh no, you only winged him. He's a Unitarian. We all saw that Simpsons episode. It's good. It's sad. It's sad.
They're just funny. Like not as... They're just, when you set out to make a Christian version of something that's popular... Sorry, Christians, it just ends up usually being kind of lame. It's just like not very fun. It's just like this is not good. I'm sorry, folks.
Shots fired at, let's see, Michael W. Smith, Switchfoot, Creed.
Oh, yeah, no.
POD.
Come at me, Creed fans.
Reliant K.
Oh, God, I forgot all about Reliant K. Yeah, no, fans of Left Behind, feel free to, bring it. I will stand by my spicy take on specific Christian media.
Fans of Christian ska, let us know what your favorite Christian ska band is. We listened to them all when we were kids, so it's fine. Okay, so Rob, I'm gonna let's dive into the world and put aside Dick Wolf. Let's put our Dick Wolves on the table and get into the great rescue of Eden again.
That's right.
Right? So in the dawn of creation, see if you can follow along here, Rob.
Okay, I'm following.
In the dawn of creation, at the outer reaches of the universe, Eden again was born from a large mass of intergalactic matter. By the will of the Maker.
Sounds like secular science to me, Matt. I don't know.
We're talking about star formation stuff. It's a different time. It spun off into space toward the star known as Warfare, and eventually,
if you were looking for subtlety in this game, you're not going to find it.
And then eventually established a predictable orbit. Then, with a word, the planet Eden again was forested and peopled. Soon after, however, that pristine world came under aggressive attack by the Evil One. In the early turnings, when Eden again was quite new, the Great Red Dragon... Do you see, Rob?
I do see.
Finally, you see.
I see.
Rob, do you promise to stop telling lies? Okay, sorry. Known as Abaddon, took one malignant egg from the dragon Kakia and transported it across the universe. In Eden again's atmosphere, the dragon ovum divided before birthing, hatching 9 evil writhing serpents in a land of peace-loving people. So, the creation myth goes on to say that basically these dragons, children of the great dragon, turned Eden again into like a world ruled by
evil dragons.
The devil.
Who
is also the devil. Yeah.
Yes. Well, so Matt pointed this out to me when we were getting ready for this episode. This is not a multiverse. This is not a separate world, right, because God has only created one universe.
Right.
It is a different planet.
Right.
Elsewhere in our infinite universe galaxy.
When
somewhere.
we go to Cobalt, we will create different universes.
That's
right.
But as it exists now, there is just the one.
Right.
And somewhere out there is Eden again.
However,
where and I'm sorry if I'm jumping ahead.
Yeah.
Where the Overlord
Oh, do you mean the Overlord of Many Names?
The Overlord of Many Names.
Oh, I know him.
Who is, and explicitly this is said in the book, also known as Jesus Christ in our world.
Superstar. Now, so yes.
So there's analogs, right? So there's God and there's Jesus and there's the devil, but in Eden Again, they're the Great Red Dragon and
Right.
the Overlord and yeah.
So Eden Again once was a paradise, and maybe it could become a Eden Again, but right now
be a
it is
paradise
ruled
again,
by the
yeah.
dragons, except for those who the Overlord of Many Names rescued, who were fleeing the terrifying dragons after realizing the dragons are full of sin. And let me see, with many terrifying dragons in pursuit, these first called out ones fled with the Overlord, who finally forfeited his own life to secure their narrow escape. In a rapid flash of brightest light, the Overlord of Many Names changed from human form into a great wall of living, turbulent water that engulfed the attacking dragons. So, you, in this game, are the children of the called out ones. Which do better. Called out ones. That's why we've called you out.
We really want to be more of like the called in ones.
Absolutely. If you have a problem with this episode, please call us in and not call us out. Now, and they became a courageous people known as the Light Raiders and the Dragon Invaders. Some even became Dragon Slayers and Salt Warriors. The game is set in you're in good land, surrounded by mountains, protected by the Overlord of Many Names.
You're in the liberated land, which is part of the continent of Talania.
Yeah, on Talania.
On
course.
Eden Again.
Right, and you have to cross into the Dragonlands
where there are places called the Lawless Basin. Actually, there's really just the rest of them are boring, but I love the Lawless
Eagle Peaks, Gray Mountains, but also Lawless
Gulf of the Ice Dragon.
Right,
that's pretty good
the
actually.
Frost Islands, maybe not some of the greatest names here, but honestly,
not the worst.
The Western Sea is on the west. I can't complain.
Right.
It gives you the latitude of the planet too. However, so yes, you're on the world of Talania and Talania, and the player characters must venture into the dragon lands to minister, murder, or save the people enslaved by the dragons.
Right. And again, it is the great rescue of Eden Again. You're trying to free people from their and they are explicitly this is interesting. Sorry, I'm jumping ahead, but the people of Talania outside of the liberated lands are dragon slaves. They are literally enslaved by the evil dragons, and you are not to kill them. You are explicitly you are explicitly Matt, if I were your adventure master, you would lose morality points for this because you are
Don't take away my belt of truth rating. I need that to move silently.
Because you are explicitly instructed by the Overlord not to kill dragon slaves because they are still people and have souls and can be redeemed. Unlike the sinful evil alien creatures.
Okay,
of which there is a name that I can't remember.
Okay, but I'm gonna read you the entry from Mound Orcs. It says, okay, we've all had Mound Orcs problems, right? You can get little shields if you have a pier and beam basin to deal with Mound Orcs. But okay, beware of Mound Orcs, the very personification of evil. Mound Orcs live to fight. The only good orc is a dead orc.
Matt, you are confusing dark creatures with dragon slaves.
Okay, so let's get into the lore of the creatures. So even though all the art, right, looks like a cheap paperback Chronicles of Narnia, there's swords, there's shields, there's beautiful white children, and there's lions and unicorns and evil dragons. But the lore of this is a planet in our universe, and it is filled with mythical creatures. Dragons, orcs, sea serpents, cave spiders, goblins, muck-mucks, golden calves, greedos, who are like flying Transdoshan types from Star Wars, grims, sprites, and skeletons. With the exception of skeletons, all these things, from trolls to giants, are aliens who have been transported to Eden Again by the dragons. And in each case, they came from a peaceful planet that loved the Overlord of Many Names. But in each case, there was a caste philosophy or subspecies on that planet who was irredeemably evil. And so that's why the dragons have collected. So the orcs are in fact an intelligent species. They have their own orc homeworld, but some of them have been transported here, so they clearly have souls, and you are to murder them.
Matt, I cannot believe that I'm arguing with you about this, but you have misread a key part.
Mound orcs once lived on the planet Urori.
Dragon slaves are separate from these orcs and other dark creatures. These are human beings who are enslaved by the evil of the dragons, and they have to be witnessed to. Matt, you have to speak word runes. Look at this. Look at this page on dragon slave arguments. I am too great a sinner. I have been following the dragons too long. I have done too many terrible things. And then it lists biblical verses that you were supposed to give to them.
So this is a world populated by like regular humans who are just not light raiders. They're not followers of the overlord of many names. They're slaves of the dragons.
Living in sin.
But then there's also aliens that are slaves to the dragons.
Right. And them you're supposed to kill.
Yes, they cannot be redeemed, but it specifically says in the lore that they're like cousins back on their like original homeworlds, the Goblin homeworld, the Selfo homeworld. I don't know exactly what Selfos look like. The troll.
There's no art for a Selfo in
the Wood Sprite homeworld. They're all like good people who have souls and are going to heaven, except for the ones that are here. So,
listen, the definition in the new player briefing describes dark creatures as non-spiritual beings, which means I assume that they have no souls that can be redeemed.
But they have homeworlds.
Look, I don't make the rules. I'm just telling you what the book says. This reminds me a lot of Tolkien and his constant waffling about orcs and like what their origins are. Because, at first, of course, they're corrupted elves, but then later in his life, as he became concerned with the souls of all sorts of things, but specifically sentient creatures, he changed it to being, birds and beasts had been transformed into orcs.
Trolls as well. But in Eden again, trolls are 3 species from the planet Bajor, who were exiled because of their war and lust for power by the other members of their planet. So one of the cool things... Listen,
Big Dig Wolf says that if you're exiled from your home planet to Eden again, then you are irredeemable and sinful and can be murdered at will.
Yes. Only good orc is a dead orc.
I'm doing my part too.
Amazing idea here is if we strip away like the weird every other thing. I love the idea of a planet in the multiverse that is like everyone who pissed off someone else. Like, okay, if we take the like seriousness of like ethnic cleansing aside in a sci-fi thing, but a planet of like people that are just like, oh man, we need the baddest dudes in the multiverse to come here. And the dragon's like, all right, we want some people who are greedy. We want some people who are selfish. We want some sprites who are horny and mischievous. We want some giants that are mediocre. That's their sin. And it was just like...
Are they slothful?
No. They just don't strive for excellence.
That's
specifically says they're just mediocre.
It's a grave sin.
Okay, so now you know a little bit about the population of the Dragonlands in which your Chronicles of Narnia children will be adventuring to. However, you don't know anything about the dragons, and we've been talking a lot about dragons, and we've talked about gem dragons, chromatic dragons, metallic dragons, but we also have in this dragon families of crystal, gaze, fluorescent, 2 kinds, fire drake, dream, slime, 2 kinds, shadow, 3 kinds, sea serpents, and rainbow dragons.
But the rainbow dragons are bad. Oh, this is very funny, and it has to be purely unintentional. But
no way they could have pulled
the rainbow dragons. Each dragon has like a mind speech that they can enchant you with, a way that they can tempt you. And the rainbow dragon, his is pride.
So Tufo, the rainbow dragon, is coming back in my game as an awesome NPC. But yes, so dragons are the evil overlords. They're like, the devil's children or something like that, because we have a devil who fucks.
Right. The great red dragon is Satan, and his children are all these colorful dragons. And
you are the woman clothed in sun. God damn, I like look at like a William. William Blake like piece of art like once a day, and it fucks me up every day. So,
Let's talk about some of the things that are. I mean, we can go on
can we
about
talk about the dragons just briefly.
Well, yeah.
So this is the coolest thing is like the ultimate boss of like an adventure arc is suggested to be a dragon because they're the real corruptors here. And dragons are powerful enemies, and we haven't talked about the mechanics of the game. But the main way they fuck you up is by like tempting you,
right?
By being like, "Hey, shouldn't you be prideful? Shouldn't you be divisive? Shouldn't you be lustful?" And they can psychically mess with the player characters' minds, which of course player characters can defend themselves.
Now, if they are good light raiders, then they will use their words of power to defend against the mind enchantments of the dragon, but they may be vulnerable. They may not be strong enough either as players or as player characters.
Right. And this is actually what ultimately destroyed DragonRaid is that in the game, right, it asked the adventure master, your cool Sunday school youth pastor, who's like, we're going to play a D&D, but for God. Which, honestly, again, if I was 12, I would have been totally into this.
Oh, for sure. This would have suckered me so hard.
Yeah. And but what the adventure master is supposed to do with the dragons is basically have a dialogue with your players' minds to convince them that like being good is bad. And it asks your players to, the assumption is your players know some Bible verses or some like Christian logic, and they fight back and they say no. And that's the whole point of some of this, right? And they use their Bible verses. They apply your Bible verses to everyday life situations like being a Christian is burdensome or something. And but this is what got them canceled by the more conservative, not down with RPG Christian right, who said that it's bad for youth pastors to like in a game
to even pretend to be evil is somehow enacting or enabling evil. And this was the reason why, and I forget the name of the evangelical, somebody with like
some televangelist.
Some televangelist with like millions of followers decided that poor Big Dick Wolf, was corrupting our youth by even acknowledging, by even having somebody pretend to be a tempter of any sort was yeah.
So, and Dick Wolf claimed that like when this happened, like every Christian bookstore and church sent their like copies back, and his company went into bankruptcy, and he had to shut down DragonRaid, which is true. I will also point out that, Rob, I don't know if you know this, but companies that make role-playing games often go out of business for just regular reasons.
They do?
So we're taking Dick Wolf's... We shouldn't take Dick Wolf's word on this, that he actually got canceled by a televangelist. He could have just gone out of business the normal way, because if we haven't mentioned, the DragonRaid box set comes with some fold-out paper cardboard miniatures, 2 dice that look like they're custom manufactured, a entire like hole punched thing that you can put into a 3-ring binder for the dungeon master, a player's guide, a bunch of pre-made character sheets, a tape cassette, a new player briefing, a huge adventure, a guide, an adventure guide, and then like a tiny book for players called the Light Raider Handbook, and a bunch of cutout cards with Bible verses. There's like a ton of shit in this book.
And we need to talk about the mechanics right now, just so that you understand the context of what's happening here. So I want to describe a word rune for you, and we will include this diagram in the show notes, and possibly we'll tweet about it as well. But so let's examine for a moment the High Cast Liberation word rune. And there are 8 elements of a word rune. So just bear with me, listeners. First, there's the difficulty level of the word rune. This is your sword and spirit rating, which is basically your class level. Has to be equal to or greater than the difficulty level for you to use the word rune. There's also the character strength. Your rating for the particular character strength must be at least as high as this number to use the word rune. There's also a number which indicates how many maturity units are added to your Sword of the Spirit rating upon accurate recitation of the word rune. There is how many maturity units are awarded to your character strength if you recite the word rune correctly. There's 5 and 6. These are the scripture reference in 7. Word runes drain power from you. So this is a number that indicates how often you can use the word rune. And then 8 is the actual description. So there are 8 parts to a word rune. So sorry, bear with me.
Okay.
So I'm now going to describe a word rune to you so you understand what I'm looking at.
Well, hurry it up.
The high cast liberation word rune, Romans 10:9. If you confess with your mouth Jesus is Lord and believe in your heart that God raised him from the dead, you shall be saved. This has a PE of 4, difficulty level of 2.
Right.
The light raider who says the high cast liberation word rune correctly will free high class dragon slaves from their bondage and give them the opportunity to choose to turn to the overlord and become twice born. Right. May only be used in...
It's a twice a day.
It may only be used
in daily power. In
castles.
Right.
So this is very interesting. This is specifically for converting noblemen and princesses who have been turned into dragon slaves.
Yes. Okay. So let's talk about the mechanics of this game. So the world, despite it being ostensibly a sci-fi world, is a exact, Chronicles of Narnia, regular medieval stuff. There's castles, there's
princesses,
service,
unicorns, swords and sorcery, archery. Yeah.
There's no sorcery really.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. There's no magic.
There's no magic. There's word runes. And so you make a character and the character creation system is, I'm looking at.
Well, Matt, it's important to know that there are 9 attributes: love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control, which you good Christians out there will recognize as being from
fruits of the Spirit.
Galatians 5:22 and 23.
So you also then use all of those stats to derive your physical vitality, your strength, your agility. You also have a stat for armor, which is the belt of truth, the breastplate of righteousness, the shield of faith, helmet of salvation, sword of the Spirit, and boots of the gospel of peace. But that's not all. You still have character abilities, which, for example, are courage, listening, endurance, quiet movement, hope, vision, knowledge, and wisdom. Then you also have weapon abilities: solo battle, battle axe, crossbow, dagger, flail, hand axe, hand-to-hand battle, lance, longbow, military fork. You gotta love old RPGs. They're always like, okay, we need a lot of pole arms in here. Quarterstaff, sling, spear, sword, and warhammer. And to calculate all of these, you take your ratings from various character strengths. For example, your listening skill is your peace skill times 2, your patience skill times 1, and your self-control times 1 divided by 4. And all of your character strengths are determined by just rolling the StarLot.
Oh, but Matt, we haven't discussed the StarLot yet.
Okay, so I hold in my hands 2 beautiful jewels. All right, now, don't drag me for this. Thank you, Rob, for letting that hang.
That's fine.
I have 2 beautiful jewels.
We have lots to cover. I don't have time. I don't have time to dwell on your jewels, Matt.
Dark Star or something. So the game is actually pretty simple. Players roll a D10 called the StarLot, and it looks like a magic jewel, and you can hold it up to the light and see a star. It's kind of neat. And the adventure master rolls a D8. And they add an appropriate modifier each time, which means the player characters are usually going to win, which is a nice kind of elegant little system they have there.
Right. And to be clear, these are not dice. They're the Shadowstone and the StarLot. And the StarLot is a crystal that was found by the Light Raiders in the Dragonlands, and there's a star encased in the center, recognized to be the Overlord's own birthmark. Anyway, sorry, there's a whole thing. So on its face, it's very simple, right? You're just rolling the 2 dice, but there are 9 statistics, like core attributes, and then dozens of derived attributes.
Right.
And
I didn't even get to the defensive abilities: evade enemy, recover from injury, and resist torture.
So when you resolve anything, you're just rolling 2 dice, but you're going to have to consult like 3 pages of character abilities and then do some more math to try to even figure out what to compare.
Right. And each level adds a different number, I think. And then, all of the derived things are done by taking either 3, 4, 5, or 6 ability scores, multiplying some, adding some, and then dividing it by an equal number to the number of ability scores, which means most of your derived attributes are going to be an average of a D10, if I understand the system correctly. So you're usually, it's a lot of work to go through to find out you have like a 4, 5, or 6 in most things. But,
right. Yeah. So, and you know, there is physical combat, right? There's like you hit the orc with a battle axe, but then there's also sin enchantments.
Right.
Which
Can we talk about sin enchantments?
we really should talk about sin enchantments. This is very important. The sin enchantments are sort of like this extra ability that all these dark creatures, again, the non-spiritual evil creatures, not dragon slaves, which are human beings who have been enslaved by dragons. Now, these are from the orcs, the muck-mucks, the Greedos.
The Greedos. I mean, the Greedos are just Rhodians, right?
Yes, right.
In my book,
right? Right.
If I'm like, hey, there's a Greedo.
There's a Greedo.
Everyone knows who I'm talking about.
And then some nerd will be like, you mean a Rhodian?
No, I mean a Greedo. I call all Wookiees Chewbacca. And all Beagles Snoopies.
Sin enchantments may be contracted from many different sources: dark creatures, dragons, and sometimes inanimate objects that have been contaminated by evil beings. So evil beings. So these these sin enchantments have difficulty levels, and then you have to roll on one of your light raider defenses, right? So your breastplate of righteousness or your boots of gospel truth or whatever, and if you fail against the sin enchantment, I actually completely forget what the
you basically get a curse that I think temporarily lowers one of your stats. Right.
It's like a debuff.
So
basically.
like if it was an enemy attack, right? It attacks like a physical attack attacks your like which one is it? A shield of faith.
Right.
But like a mind attack might attack your like breastplate of righteousness, depending on the specific type of sin. You make a defense roll, and if it hits you, you start fuck it up. You get, you can become greedy.
It might come after your helmet of salvation. You might have to roll your helmet of salvation roll to defend against
But so light raiders, at least even when they start out, have the Overlord of Many Names has not sent them into the Dragonlands defenseless. They have the ability to memorize or read and then deploy in battle his WordRunes. Right.
I improve. I improve.
Rob's pointing to disarming and overpowering
against dragon slaves specifically, who are not to be killed.
All orcs must die.
Orcs are not dragon slaves. All right. So the thing is,
the fucked up thing is, I want to spoil anything. There's a part we'll get to later where you're in heaven, and there are orcs there, Rob.
I don't make the rules. I'm just telling you how the interpretation by Dick Wolf is supposed to go. So here's the thing. So all right. So you have these gajillion attributes, and there's normal combat. I hit the bad guy with a sword. And then there's spiritual combat, and then there's WordRunes, right? There's all these different systems, and they're all very complicated. There's no like real like, doesn't intuitively make sense. You always have to look up. Oh, I'm defending with this ability against this attack roll, or I'm making this attack roll, which is different if I'm using my spear compared to using my sword, and there's no like it doesn't like mechanically fit together in a way that sort of like makes sense. You have to like go to the index every time you take an action, basically.
Right. To calculate your characters is, I don't know, it's got to take an hour. It's still got to take like 20 minutes, even if you use the pre-rolled characters they give you. So we're saying this is the most complicated game. And one of the other funny things is like in the starter adventures, which we'll get to in a second, they're like, okay, so here's this complicated stuff. This is a spiritual battle. Also, you start with 2 melee weapons, a ranged weapon, 5 candles, a bedroll, a pickaxe, a hatchet, a penknife, and some like weekly rations. Because Dick Wolf played
Dungeons and Dragons.
Original Dungeons and Dragons. He's like, oh, you gotta have this shit.
Right. You can't.
Well, if you don't have any candles, how are you gonna see?
Yeah, you're not gonna be an adventurer if you don't have a penknife. Are you kidding me?
So I love that. I love that little thing there. Okay, so tell us. Let's get more into some fucking WordRunes, because some of these are really awesome. So there are all kinds of WordRunes. One of the other random things is like your weapon abilities are kind of determined fairly randomly from your other stats, right? So
yeah, I also failed to mention, or I don't know. There's also like an advanced combat section in case the existing combat is not deadly or complicated enough for you.
Right, but it's like if you have a high joyful rating, like you're better with crossbows, but like worse with slings. Who knows, right? It's very strange. But okay, Eternal Battle and Great Rescue word runes, right? And so basically the way this works, and I think one of the main points of the game is to get kids to memorize Bible verses. Right.
So to be explicit here, so once per day, once per session, you can read your word rune from the card, right? You don't have to have it memorized. But if you want to use it again, it has to be memorized, or it has to be repeated precisely. So if you were a big stupid nerd like Matt and I were and memorized a bunch of Bible verses, you would be great at DragonRaid and be able to use your word runes all the time. And you also get character bonuses. Like you basically get experience for correctly repeating word runes
and applying them to the correct situations. There are word runes that like convert people. There are word runes that resist sin enchantments or dragon speech. There are word runes that like buff you or an ally in battle. You specifically have to write someone's name down when you cast this. Sorry, you don't cast them.
No,
They're not spells.
It's not magic, people. It's not magic.
But they kind of are. Like, there's one called, let's see. And some of them have limited uses per day, right? Some can be used as many times as you want, right? And then some can only be used like once a day, like the Ultimate Hope word rune, in which you have to say Hebrews 12:28 through 29, and this word rune can only be used once in a light raider's lifetime. It will bring down fire from heaven and consume all surrounding dark creatures, but the life of a light raider must be seriously threatened before he uses it.
There's also an eating disorder word rune, which is food unbinding. The light raider who can repeat the food unbinding word rune without error can set another person free from the desire to overeat. I mean, it's a weird combination of here's a combat word rune with like specific application, and here's one that makes you not want to sin, or helps you convince a dragon slave to return to the light and give up their sinful ways.
Sadly, there's no unseen servant or like dancing lights or all of our minor illusion. Some of our favorite spells didn't make it over, but Flame Strike.
Flame Strike made it over. Yeah.
Here's the other like cool thing about like character creation, which is there are roles after you've leveled up and your Sword of the Spirit rating is going through the roof because you're converting people.
You're killing orcs.
Slaves.
You're converting dragon slaves. You're challenging dragons themselves. Yeah.
You can pick up special character roles, which are just straight from like what any kid who's read The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe like imagines them to be when like they're playing in the forest by themselves. Lion Warrior, Wolf Soldier, Bear Knight. Dibs on Bear Knight, Rob.
Bear Knight's pretty cool.
Animal Master. And all of these get animal companions.
Which is awesome.
Which is what kids want.
Yep.
A Renewer, that's your healer. A Knight of the Way, which is a ranger. An Overlord's Guard, which is a spy. You're a changeling, or you can disguise self. A Rescue Master. A Raid Leader, which is good at World of Warcraft. And a Guardian of Light, which is the best one.
Very, very, yeah. Clearly a paladin type thing.
But it's, you can become an animal master and have a squirrel, a stag, a skunk, a beaver, and a porcupine. I should also mention one of the just wonderful things about the design of this. So there's many things that are bullshit, but one of the great things about the design is enemy monsters and NPCs have a single stat, which is, I love, right? Lots of modern RPGs do this, but DragonRaid, way ahead of its time.
Yeah, like I mentioned, this is like a really great innovation. It's just kind of ruined by the fact that like everything else is so complicated. So even though you only have one number to compare to, you're still having to go back to the book to figure out what the fuck that number is supposed to relate to. So, all right.
Okay, just a couple more runes.
Team runes. Team runes are like word runes, but they
apply to your team, right?
Yes.
So the whole team can say it together. Like, for example, the love shield team rune. Many are the woes of the wicked, but the Lord's unfailing love surrounds the man who trusts him. Psalm 32:10. The raid team can say the love shield team rune from memory will cause an invisible shield to surround them, and all missile weapons and rocks will fall harmlessly aside. Note, this is a stationary shield. It does not move.
May only be used once per week. So, Matt,
there's also like spider climb. I mean, the non-slip team room. He will not let your foot slip. He who watches over you will not slumber. So you've got Bible verses.
There's a freedom of movement team rune. There's Leomund's tiny hut.
Yes. The humble shelter team rune from Zephaniah 2:3, which is an apocrypha book.
I think Zephaniah is not.
No, is that a minor prophet?
Zephaniah? Hang on. I think that might be apocrypha.
Oh, so do we now know that Dick Wolf is Catholic or like of the Eastern rites?
This is wild. Sorry, I didn't realize I had not seen this Zephaniah yet. That's incredible.
The book of Zephaniah. Oh no, wait, never mind. It's in the.
He's a minor prophet. Sorry, everyone. It's been too long since we read the Bible.
Proceeded. Zephaniah is the 9th of the 12th minor prophet. Sorry, everyone. We're not noobs.
We know our NRSV and our NIV. Matt, there's a lot still to talk about. I want to talk
the hotfoot word rune.
It could go on all day. I want to talk about the Adventure Master. So this game is run.
Okay. Yeah, let's talk about the Adventure Master, then the Adventure. I'll walk you through some.
Oh, Matt. Okay, fine. We also got to talk about what's happening with Light Raiders now.
Okay.
But all right. So the Adventure Master is the Dungeon Master, or the analog. And what's really interesting about this book, or this series of books, is this actually very explicit about about how to run a game, right? It goes into a lot more detail than a lot of other RPGs and D&D does about getting a group together, handling interpersonal conflict, about how to deal with players who aren't engaged.
Hit us with some of the like gems from this, because one of the cool things about this book, again, giving it like credit where it's due and none anywhere else, is that it assumes that the person running this is your cool youth pastor who does not know what a role-playing game is and will not be able to run one unless they're given the most basic advice.
Listen to this. When a player is disruptive, now we get letters about this all the time. So let me tell.
What are letters? We haven't done those.
We did like 3 weeks ago. Okay. This is what Dick Wolf have to say about a disruptive player. During the course of your adventure mastering, there may come a time when you run across a disruptive player who is disturbing other members of your group. He may be causing divisions, arguing over whatever is done, and in general, not acting like a light raider. Such a player can make leading the game.
Imagine pulling like little Josiah aside and being like, Josiah, you are not acting like a light raider today.
Matt, I'm glad you brought this up, because here are some suggestions for how to deal with a disruptive player. Have a talking animal come out of the background and address this particular player, informing him that light raiders do not act like this, that he is acting more like a dark creature or dragon slave than a light raider.
God, I would be so crushed if a cute talking animal from Chronicles of Narnia told me I was not a good boy. I would be devastated.
At a stopping point, you may take this player aside and in private confront him. Tell him he is disturbing the game, making it very difficult for you as well as the other players to concentrate. Try to find out why he's doing this. He may have a problem. Notice that this assumes this is a game for boys, played by boys. Every pronoun is he.
In some of the sample, like what gameplay is like, it's definitely like you stumble upon a poor but like beautiful slave girl in the mansion of one of the dragons, and you save her and you give her the hug of the believers. So a very chaste hug, and then you take her away to freedom, and presumably she becomes your girlfriend.
Here's the third suggestion. A more subtle solution may be to have a dragon or dark creature come and attack that player's character, seriously wounding or killing him as you see fit. The player would be forced to sit on the sidelines where he may be able to see the results of his actions. And then the summary, this is great, Matt. You're going to love this. Part of a Christian leader's responsibility involves disciplining those who need it. However, these suggestions are to be used only when a player is deliberately being disruptive, not when he is merely role-playing or acting out a sin enchantment to create diversion and division. Usually, wait.
Yeah.
Usually, public humiliation in front of a group of friends is sufficient to help keep such a player in line. Dismissal should be considered only after all other options have been tried. You heard it here, folks. If you're having trouble with a player, publicly humiliate them. That's a great way to make sure that they don't do it anymore.
Yeah. Some of the other advice is equally bad. Some of it is good. It's like, what happens if you, the adventure master, become confused? And it's like, take a step back and say, I made a mistake, or something like that, or ask your players what they want to do, right? If you are disoriented. It also suggests, in a beautiful 1980s way, if you have a serious problem, please write us at P.O. Box 25909, Colorado Springs, Colorado. Another great piece of advice is, what happens if the characters try and leave the narrative? And it's like, well, that might be fun. But then it's like, also, if it's not fun, a talking animal shows up and says, the overlord of many dames doesn't want you to play that way. Don't try and run your own, caravan or start a trinket shop in the Dragonlands. That's for the Salt Warriors to do. Sorry, there are Salt Warriors who are light raiders who are
retired. Who now they run shops.
Yeah, they run the shops in the Dragonlands.
But they explicitly only sell goods for their exact value because they're not there for profit.
Their exact use value, exchange value, labor value.
Dick Wolf does not specify.
Dick Wolf does not say whether he's from the marginal school of economics and he believes that value is meaningless, or he believes that things actually have value. I guess if you ask Dick Wolf, he might go back to old school Christian in that arbitrage is not only is usury sinful, arbitrage is sinful.
I would like to ask him.
It's bad to buy something where it's cheap and then sell it where it's dear.
Dick Wolf passed away this year at the comfortable age of, I think he was in his 80s, so we cannot ask him, unfortunately. So there's also, and again, I really like this actually. There's a section on how to run NPCs, how to make a battle exciting, how to keep suspense high, how to organize your group. This is something that I kind of wish was in more games, right? Explicitly how to get people together, how to find them, where to meet. There's how to prepare for a game, how to use the guidebook, record keeping. Again, it's not super detailed, but this book is very thoughtful about how hard it is to run a game as an adventure master, and it gives you a bunch of tools to do so.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the adventure, which is, and so the box set, which Matt has, contains many things, including the first part of a 3-part adventure, and more on that later.
Yeah, there's 2 adventure books. Part 1, The Light Raider Test. Part 2, Rescue of the Sacred Scrolls. In both adventures, the players are, again, light raiders heading into the Dragonlands. The first to get some sacred scrolls. The sacred text. Back from the Dragonlands. The second to rescue, or the first to rescue a light raider who has gone missing and needs their help. The funny thing is, after all this, spiritual, high-minded stuff, the adventure is okay, you go to a cave. The cave has a troll. You go to a glade. The glade has a giant. You go to there's a party of goblins ambushes you. Eventually, you get to fight cooler things like a dragon once you make it out of the orc tunnels and head to a fancy castle that is full of human dragon slaves. God meets you in the form of a unicorn, and it's not hot at all. You try not to get horny. What I thought was really cool or weird or interesting about this is not only does the tape help guide you, but the game is written in a way that it's here's the scene that happens next for the players. If they do this, go here. If they don't do this, go here. right?
There's
It's
genuinely
choose your own
a very nice flow chart, basically, that
Right.
the kind of thing that we recommend, but that most written adventures don't include.
So here's an example of like what the challenges are like. So there are some challenges where like goblins show up and try and kill you, but there's others where the players meet a giant, and as we know, giants are cursed with the sin of mediocrity. And the giant has a giant gourd.
Is it like a Nephilim, or is it just like straight up a giant? Like, missed opportunity here.
The cover art makes it just look like a regular fantasy giant as opposed to a Nephilim, but which is sad. And the giant is drunk, and so as the adventure master, you have to roleplay being drunk around a bunch of 12-year-olds, which might be awkward. And the giant says to them, if the players talk to him, sorry, he has a great line here. Hail and well met. I'm so glad you folks have come along. It gets lonely up here and I want to talk to someone. Please speak to me. Don't be afraid. I won't harm you. Come on, please. And the players, if they talk to the giant asks them to take a drink of his it doesn't matter. Won't you have a little bit of my friendship juice, which is alcohol? So the adventure master has to try and get the kids in his Sunday school pretend drunk.
He has to tempt them with alcohol.
And then if they say no, the giant says, have a little fun. It'll make you feel good all over. Or don't be a party pooper. I'll give you some gold too.
Yeah, so you're trying to, as the adventure master, run an adventure, but also it's pedagogical, right? You are trying to teach the young Christian youths how to be warriors of Christ, how to be, knights of faith like Abraham. Kierkegaard would be proud. It's a whole, yeah. I mean, you can imagine that, like, you're sitting down for a fun adventure, you fight some goblins, and then suddenly you're in the middle of like a Bible parable, and you're having to, turn away the giant 3 times in order to move on.
Well, the tough thing about that one is like you could drink and that will encourage the giant to drink more and fall asleep, and then you can go around him. But this also means like your characters have fucking sinned. But you could also just murder the giant, which I don't know, which is the greater sin. Like if you do try and be like a moral Christian person here, things get really complicated really fast. Like, is it better to sin to avoid taking the life of the giant by drinking his friendship juice? Or is it better to not drink the friendship juice and fight him? Because if you don't drink the friendship juice, he will fight you.
I don't know. I don't have the answer,
Anyway,
and this is the thing.
So there's all these like morality plays, and then interspersed is like a open lock puzzle where you have to like move levers to like open a lock, which is wonderful. It's great.
And that's the thing is, like, I do believe that Dick Wolf really was trying to teach children how to be more biblical through role-playing games. It's just the way that he went about it is just kind of bewildering.
It's very strange.
It's very strange.
Last thing is when you die.
Yes, right.
So I mean, there's some dungeon master advice. It's like, if your character like doesn't want to die, like maybe rescue them. But if a player character dies, you regain consciousness in heaven. You turn to the section at the end of each adventure that says life after death, and you do a short game with that one player, like while everyone else is watching, of them experiencing heaven, and everything's wonderful. And then you also, in one of the scenes, you meet some goblins who are like, oh, we're the good goblins from the other planet, and we're not bad. But then your character's journey's over, but it's important to know your character has gone to heaven.
Yeah. It's weird. It's weird. It's and of course, since it's a RPG written in 1984, it is expected that your players will die because it's a highly lethal and violent game where death happens. But you go to heaven.
Right. You can meet some angels. I promise it won't be terrifying. And then, it's over.
Yeah. So there's
here's how the adventure ends again for a dead player. How does it feel to be here and to be alive for all of eternity?
Yeah. So there's a million more things we could say about DragonRaid, and I don't know, maybe we will at some point. But to summarize, it's hilarious. And if you're interested in this, either for real or for irony, you can go to lightraiders.com .com.net, where
I mean, don't do this. So a new guy owns it who goes by he's trying to create new ops.
he's James
for,
Hannibal, James C. Hannibal, and he's
a Christian young adult author and former stealth fighter pilot. And I would not encourage people to go and buy this because he does seem not great.
He bought or was gifted the intellectual property rights from Dick Wolf before he passed, and I guess sort of the long and short of it is that DragonRaid has been rebirthed as Light Raiders, which is a card game and a board game and a series of books. Looks like it sucks, but weirdly enough, like people have found and rediscovered DragonRaid kind of at the same time as Matt got his hands on this copy of it.
Well, this makes me, there's a couple fun things that this makes me think of that are relevant to this podcast, which is if you have like any sort of character, it is fun always to make your own like book of philosophy, spirituality, or like of a religion or a god in the game. And like I love being a cleric and like reading a sacred text that usually I made up when I cast my spells. That reminds me of the WordRunes, and that's pretty cool. I
mean, the concept of WordRunes is not unlike Words of Power, which is one of what I thought the very cool alternative casting system in D&D, and it's a great idea. But also, there's literally no way to make repeating Bible verses seem cool and fun. No matter how hard you try to sort of like align them with not magic, Matt, but powerful effects or whatever.
Right. And I guess the other thing I'll say about this is I think a debate that is relevant today, where we're recognizing that at their best, role-playing games can be a form of art. Collaborative storytelling. Storytelling's art. Right. Collaborative storytelling's art. But they're also games, right? With rules for entertainment, and they're for fun. And there's a lot of discussion, and I'm not the expert on this, so I'm not going to come out with some sort of decisive statement, but like how should like role-playing games be used as like a form of therapy or to teach correct morals or thought? And my own opinion is I'm not sure. Probably not, though. Like games can be therapeutic because art can be therapeutic, but art doesn't have to be therapeutic. So like I don't know where I'm going with this.
No, I'm following, and I agree with you. And the thing is, I think there is a lot of discussion, like can TTRPGs, can games be educational? Can they be instructive? And the answer is yes.
Of course.
But I don't know that you can approach them with that as your intent, right? I don't think that you can set out to make an educational role-playing game
because you can't ensure that any group will play the same way or do any of the things that you're thinking.
Right. And ultimately you'll do you'll do a bad job of both. Like it won't be very educational and it won't be fun.
Right.
Rather,
you should try and make good art.
You should try to make good art, good games that are fun
and inclusive and
right.
And
like
cool
the thing is like there are many good games these days which are like, hey, here's that's just an example. Here's an entirely new setting, which is deliberately post-colonial, and here's some exposure to some non-Western ideas. That's a way to teach through a TTRPG, but the game is still fun, and that's you're not being sat down and here's first you have to repeat this section from does the subaltern speak before you're allowed to do anything. No,
no one is under any illusions that like playing this game is a replacement for real world politics
or study
or struggle or study.
Yeah, but
it's better art because it
can be interesting or it can be inspiration and it can lead to learning. Right. And I think if I were going to, and I wouldn't, but I guess if I were going to try to like create a Christian role-playing game, you would dress it up in
a
like
little more
in Christian like trappings, and you can do that.
Right.
But you wouldn't like force players to like, honestly, like the best example is legitimately Narnia, which is a very obvious allegory, but it is not so. It stops just short of treating the readers like they're idiots. So it is an enjoyable book to read and instructive and good for, I guess, Christians theoretically. My parents love it. Without being sort of deliberately pedagogical.
Yeah, I wonder how, like, I think role-playing can be used as a pedagogy, right?
Right.
I do it all the time. In my government class, we take a week where everyone is like a member of Congress, and they're all shitty and mean to each other,
Right.
like people in Congress, and see if they can get anything done. But like, it's not like a game. There's no art then.
Right. You
It's,
didn't create a Congress role-playing
It was
game.
a lesson plan.
Right.
Right.
And I think that's the point. This point that I'm making.
Had to make a quiz after it. They had to learn vocab just like players have to learn WordRunes.
Is that you can have an educational role-playing experience, or you can have a role-playing game. But when you try to do both, you do both poorly.
Right. So role-playing games, they're not a replacement for study, politics, therapy,
Art, any sort of
Well, maybe they can be a form of art, right?
Yeah. But they are not. Yeah, they can't be a form of art.
However, all of those things like can be, because they're subjective, like happening there. But you shouldn't use them as a replacement for any of those things.
Exactly.
And the same would apply to Christians, I think. Sorry.
Yes. No, that's the point. So
this is, I guess, like part 2 of our like Christianity's intersection with role-playing games.
There'll be more. We're still planning a big one on Mothers Against Dungeons and Dragons at some point.
That'll be the epic conclusion. So we've seen a Christian defense of D&D.
That's right.
And then we have now seen a Christian version of D&D that's not actually a Christian version of the D&D according to its creator.
Yeah. So I hope you thought this was interesting. We're going to post a bunch of pictures of this and segments from the books, because it really is. This is honestly like astonishingly like pretty high production quality for the time period. Matt alluded to this, but I am confident that the guy just went out of business and he's blaming it on
a televangelist. I'm sure a televangelist said this game is evil,
but I don't know whether or not that had any impact. I hope you found this interesting. Write us if you have any questions or thoughts, or God forbid, or maybe like if you did play this at some point.
I would love it if any of our listeners played this. I mean, it was well before, like it was made before either of us were born. And probably out of business shortly thereafter.
Yeah.
But I know we have a lot of Christian listeners who are not like Dick Wolf and the Colorado Springs Christians know what I'm talking about.
Yeah,
it's code word for a certain type of Christian.
Certain type of Christian, yeah.
So let us know if you've ever encountered this.
And yeah, we'll be happy to hear from you. Yeah. Thanks for listening, everybody. Stay healthy, stay safe, and keep rolling them. StarLots
and Shadowstones.
Shadowstones. Fuck, I forgot what they're called.